Hello, learners. Welcome to part two of this session on getting to know your clients better. In this session, we're going to talk about how to read a brief, understand the process and steps of making a brief, and continue from our previous session where we spoke about the different aspects of what a client is, how a client sees an agency, what's the client's perspective, and what would it need to actually enable an agency to read a client and deliver solutions to a client. So let's get into the presentation and do a deep dive and understand the process of reading a client, knowing a client, and how to enable a client to give you the right answers, which would enable you to read him better, know him better, and deliver a perfect solution. So this is part two of our session. Typically, the event process is a multi-layered, step-by-step exercise. So let's start with point number one, the client. Uh, Understanding and recognizing the needs of the client. So typically, every client will come to you with a requirement, uh, or you could call it a problem, or you could call it a necessity. And taking that necessity and converting it into a solution, which we call as an event, is what the whole process is all about. So if you go carefully through this slide, it actually explains the entire event management process, give or take a few things here and there, give or take a few event types here and there, more or less. Almost about 99% of events will follow this format to be able to get executed successfully. So let's look at the first point, which says client and recognition of needs. The second and the foremost point is taking the brief. So getting that meeting right, whether it is in person, over a video call, over a phone, or wherever, the importance is to get to the client on a one-on-one basis. So ideally, if it's a prolonged meeting, it is a meeting where you spend quality time rather than quantity time to understand what he is expecting. And if it is a singular meeting or a set of multiple meetings, it should satisfy you as an agency and the client as an individual to say that I have been able to tell the agency whatever is needed for me to get a solution. And you as an agency should be confident enough to say that we've understood everything that we needed to know about the necessity of the client. And therefore, we are enabled enough to come back to him with a plausible and logical solution, which would meet his expectations and help him buy into us. So taking the brief and the meeting is the second and the most critical step of the process. The next step that an agency should do as a practice is create a contact report. So after doing due diligence and understanding what the client is expecting, you go back to him with an understanding of what you comprehended from what he spoke to you about. So when you've taken the brief from him, you go back to him saying, this is what we understand of your needs, and therefore these are the minutes of the meeting of what transpired between us, and this is what we take away from your questions and answers that you gave us. So this leads to a verification. So then you go back to the client and say, hello, did you understand what we have understood? Is it right? Is it what you think is the correct understanding? Or do you think of any course correction? Or is there been an afterthought after you spoke to us where you think that the approach or the methodology or the points that you brought on the table for our understanding needed a rethink, and therefore you have changed your course of action? So this enables you to further fine tune your brief and avoid wastage of time. Remember, our time is money and we are selling nothing but our time. So when you are doing that due diligence, when you are doing a verification, you are further streamlining your scope and therefore enabling the client to believe that A, you mean business, you mean to provide a solid solution, you understand him thoroughly, and you've also got down for him to verify that understanding in a perfect manner, thereby building his confidence that whatever you come back with to him with will be a logical and thorough presentation. So then that gets into a proposal. You prepare a document, uh, you go to the client after getting that document verified, and then the client obviously will tell you, yes, I like the idea, let's have a buy-in, and I'm going to sign you on as an agency. Or he says, no, I don't like this idea, maybe somebody else's was better. Or maybe he'll say, okay, I think I have an afterthought and maybe I may not work this time, but I would like to do it some other time. Okay. Then it gets into, if there's a yes and a buy, then you get into pre-production, you get into a detailed design, you get into logistics, and this is the time when you actually get into detailing a more thorough brief for your creative, for your technical, for your suppliers, your vendor partners, and you get into a brief for them where they then implement the idea, they then implement the proposal and deliver a cutting edge event. And that is where you get into delivery. And then it follows up with a continuation where you go back to the client, take feedback, you collect your payment, and then it goes into an ongoing relationship which goes on forever. Now, what constitutes a great brief? The first thing is to get to know your client. This is the essence of our session today. So always make an attempt to do a small research on your client. Try and look up a website, try and read about him on social media, try and understand what he does as a person, as a company, as a group, as a community. What kind of other extracurricular activities does he do besides selling his physical product or service? What kind of engagements is he doing with his audiences? How is he talking to them in various forums and channels? What is he doing in other markets, in other cultural regions? So if it's an MNC or a multinational client, then he probably is doing things in other cities, in other markets, in other countries. So what kind of activities is he doing? And how is he engaging his customers there? This would give you a sense of benchmarks on his approach, his thought, his understanding, and also allow you to measure up and say, maybe if I take this route or I enhance what he's done in the current markets that he's played with, you'll be able to approach the strategy more effectively. Get a grip on his company's background, past records, products, different other products that he's marketed, what his competition is doing, what his other businesses are doing, and that will enable you to get into the groove. It's like meeting a stranger for the first time and not knowing what to talk to him. But if you know about the stranger, if you know about what he does, if you've read about him, if you understood a little bit about him, you can create a conversation. So what you're trying to do is break the ice. So when you meet a client for the first time, if you know certain aspects about him, you could actually start a conversation, get him acclimatized to you, get him comfortable to you, and then you start detailing what you need from him. And that will set the ball rolling for you to enable yourself to understand and read his requirements and come back with a great solution. So as I said, if a company has a website, read about it. And this all is going to make a lot of difference when you're going to a client. Always document a meeting. Today we have smartphones, we have recorders, we have iPods, we have so many other technological tools. Record the meeting. Take his permission. So may I record this conversation? So it will help me get all the essences down perfectly. It will help me get all the keywords down perfectly. It will get me to understand your thoughts and document them perfectly. And also my own thoughts, which I would express in this meeting, would be imprinted here. I could share this recording with you, so you also have a record of what was transpired in this meeting. And this sets a level of professionalism. A, because you have documented this correctly, you got the transcript, you can go back to your office, write this down in bullet points, send him her minutes of the meeting back, and thereby enabling him to read through and say, hey, we discussed these points, they're perfect, or they're not correct, or they need course correction, or I have an afterthought, and that gets added on, and that's how the brief is bang on. So a formula to share with you for making a brief is follow the 5 W's. When, what, where, who, why. If you structure these in this format, I guarantee you that you will never go wrong in learning or knowing a client perfectly. So always start your presentation with your client's background. So whenever you go to pitch to a client, talk about your client's background. What do you understand of him? How do you read him? Whatever have you heard about him? Put it down on paper. Get him or his stakeholders or the other people in the room to know how much you know about the client and how well you have read or understood him. Prepare a detailed fact sheet on this category: the product, the service, what the market is doing, what are the trends, what is happening in the industry, what are people talking about, what are people liking, what do his consumers like, what is the kind of media they're consuming, what kind of engagements are they getting into, what kind of food are they eating, what kind of experience are they going through, what kind of lifestyle are they enjoying at this moment, what are their fears, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what kind of opportunities are they looking at, what kind of engagements are they getting into. This will actually help you structure a very thorough strategy, and it will also get the client to look up and say, this man or this person who's coming across to me means business. He knows me in and out. He knows my market in and out. He knows what my audience wants. He knows what my audience is expecting, and therefore I must give him a good listening. Maybe he has a solution which I may not have seen or heard about. Understand the USP of the client. The USP is unique selling proposition. So what does his product or brand or his company do? And how is he positioning himself? And that is a very critical element or a pivot which will connect the brand or the product to the consumers. So let's understand the formula. When I said when is your event? What date are you doing it? What time are you doing it? What season is it going to happen in? Imagine doing an outdoor event in the peak of the monsoon in India. It rains very heavily. So would you advise doing an event in the open air? Audiences will get wet or your equipment will get wet. It's a bad experience. Unless it's a rain dance and you want people to enjoy and experience the weather. So timing of the event becomes very critical. When is sunset going to be on that day? Because if it's an outdoor event and the sun doesn't set, your lights won't come on, the effect won't come on, you won't be able to deliver the event. The date becomes a critical factor. So let's look at a financial product company which is wanting to sell an insurance. The very fact that insurance is bought as an investment and people often invest during the time of tax saving. Most insurance products are launched and sold during the year end or the financial year end of a cycle. So, most products or FMCG products are sold at the beginning of the month because salaries are given out to people. Because when I have disposable income, I would probably invest in a product and want to try something new. So the date of an event becomes very important from a sales perspective. Again, for social celebrations, you wouldn't want to do it during periods of prayer or periods of mourning. So in Christians, people don't get married during Lent because they abstain from alcohol, they abstain from meat, and meat and alcohol as a part of celebrations is very critical in most of the Catholic weddings that are held across the world. In Hindus, we don't celebrate weddings during the Shraddh period because it's a time when we pay obeisance to our elders and to our ancestors. In the case of Muslims, they don't celebrate during Ramadan because it's a time of prayer. It's a time of paying obeisance to God and praying for the goodwill of the community. So in the time of penance, they wouldn't like to do any kind of celebration which would, break away from the norms. So having an understanding of the culture of people, having an understanding of their religious sentiments, having an understanding of their practices that they employ when they live in communities also is an impact on the timing of the event. So the date becomes a critical factor. The season becomes a critical factor because if it's too hot or if it's too cold, you would need to provide functional elements that would enable the comfort of the audience that is enjoying the experience. Day or night again determines how you would treat the event, whether it's decor or whether it is the elements of design that you would play in. So if it's a day Mehndi Sangeet ceremony, then you would have more vibrant colors because there's natural sunlight and you can't beat the sunlight and do something overpowering about what natural light can do. However, it's a night event. If it's dark, then you would use colored lighting, you would use moods, you would use effects to create a drama around your event. Sundown becomes an important aspect because if it's an outdoor event, it would also enable you to light up your event correctly if it's going to be dark. What is an event occasion? So every event is a differentiator. Uh, what is the event when I say that, or what is the occasion, or what is the objective of doing this event determines how you will treat it. So is it a fashion show? Is it a product launch? Is it a conference? Is it a private meeting? Is it a sports event? Is it a public celebration? Is it an employee motivation program? Is it a training program? Is it an incentive program? Is it a wedding? Is it a social celebration? Is it a milestone? Is it a kitty party? Is it a event to celebrate a milestone in the family? Is it a birth celebration? Is it a naming celebration? Is it a pregnancy announcement? Is it a IP? Is it a digital event? Is it a virtual event? So what is the event? By knowing the event, you could actually auto-calculate in your head the parameters that would be required to execute the event. So if I say if it's a virtual event, I would need a virtual platform to communicate with my customers and get them engaged on that platform. If it's a product launch, I would need to physically present the product in a dramatic way to enable my audience to say, wow, and then understand the facets of the product and make it the hero of the day. So every event, by knowing what is the event, I could actually visualize the execution parameters of delivering that event. Also, it would help me and enable me to understand what is the client expecting out of the event as a delivery mechanism. The format of the event. So again, if I say a fashion show, now, is it a fashion show to display clothing and sell it? Or is it a fashion show to make people feel the concept of glamour, see beautiful looking people walking on a ramp, displaying clothes, displaying garments, making an aspirational statement and saying, hey, I am a mobile phone. I am for someone who is nouveau rich, who is fashion conscious, who understands brands, and therefore I am connected to something which is a lifestyle statement. So there are two distinct ways of depicting fashion as a statement, and that becomes the format of the event. So when you talk in generic a fashion event, you could further probe and classify and understand what is the purpose of the event, what is the occasion of the event, and how are you going to use fashion as a subject line to deliver a storyboard to the client. The category of the event, again, it's classified under. So whether it's incentive, whether it's conference, conference for knowledge, conference for entertainment, conference for talking about a very serious subject, conference for continuous education, conference to tell about a new sales strategy, conference to warn people, conference to instill fear in people. It could be anything. So again, the categorization of the event becomes very important as a part of the subject line. What is the event flow? How will the event get structured? From the time you make the announcement to engage the audience to the time they leave the venue, what will happen day by day, week by week, hour by hour, minute by minute? That becomes an essential parameter to put processes into perspective. So right from the first meeting you have with the client to the buying that the client takes into you, and from that day onwards, if you create a proper flow of what will happen every single hour, day, every single day, every single hour, every single minute, what kind of reporting formats you would get into, what kind of course structure that you would get into, again, is an essential of telling the client of how you would process his business. And that is an important step of getting to tell the client that this is how I know you and this is how I want to deliver it to you. And this is an important process of what is the event flow? What are the mandatories? Essentials could be simple. I want the chairman to sit on a red chair. You didn't think about it. But if it didn't come from a client, you wouldn't know about it. So then you would be caught unaware on the event day when the client would say, hey, where's the red chair? I didn't know about it. You didn't tell me about it, but you didn't ask me about it. You're the event expert. You're supposed to tell me. So getting to know and telling the client, hey, can you tell us the mandatories from your side? Or can we get into a mandatory understanding of what are the essentials that you need, which are must-haves from your side? Whether it be drinking water at multiple counters, a security check of everyone getting into the venue, or ensuring safety of the audience, or finding an evacuation plan in case there's a contingency or emergency, or how will you have backups for everything that you will put as technology in the event? Because if I fear that if something fails, it's my first time of doing an event, you may be very confident about the gear that you'll bring in, the vendor partners that you'll bring in. But what if it fails? You never know. So how will you double ensure that there is all safety taken into account? So this could be a mandatory. So mandatories could be anything. Talk to the client, understand his problem, understand his fears, understand his needs, and then make a wish list saying, these are must-haves for the event. Come anything. Where is the event location? Now, I'll give you a typical example. So is it an indoor event? Is it an outdoor event? Is it a location which is at a height? Is it a location which is on a ground level? Is it a banquet hall that is located 5 floors above? Which means that I need to take my equipment 5 floors above. If I have large structures, heavy structures, I would need more labor. And I have limited time to take my material up because I need to rig up the event. What is the topography of the event? Topography essentially means the layout of the event. So are there pillars in the venue? What is the ceiling height of the venue? Does it restrict my audience view? If I build a stage which is 4 feet high and the venue is only 10 feet high, which means the moment a 6-foot person stands in the venue, he'll hit the ceiling. So you need to be very clear about the layout of the venue. Where will audience enter from? Where will the material enter from? Where will the technical crew enter from? If an artist needs to be unveiled on the venue, how does he come in secretly without clashing into the audience and people mobbing him for photographs? So this becomes an essential understanding of where is the venue. So if the client gives you a location saying, I want to host an event at XYZ banquet hall in a 5-star hotel or in a convention center in this particular city, you should be enabled enough to go back, research, find out the city, find out the venue, find out the layout of the venue. If it requires you to send someone physically to go see, take pictures, measure the venue, and come back with a feasible plan, and then go to the client and saying, I have seen the venue, I have understood the dimensions, I have understood the logistic issues, I have understood the topography, I have understood what are the challenges of getting into the venue with people, with technology, with infrastructure and your guests. And therefore, we can only fit in so many number of people into the venue. This becomes an essential of where is the venue. So, as I said, these are the fundamentals that you need to get into, right from flooring, electricals, water supply, sanitation. So when you're doing a recce or you're doing a check of the venue, you are actually getting into these kind of logistical details. Who is attending the venue? What is the type of people? Are they masses? Where do they come from? What are their lifestyles? What is the TG, your target group? What are they doing for a living? What kind of experiences do they want? What are their expectations? What are their aspirations? How do they connect with brands like you? How do they connect with people like you? When they go to events, which you would probably want to host, what is their expectation? How do they react to stimuli? And that is a research that you need to put into understanding when you're saying who is your TG. So what is the capacity of crowd that you're expecting? So technically, when you're looking at audiences, what kind of seating would you offer them? Are they going to sit on chairs? Are they going to stand? Are they going to stay in a huddle on a round table? Are you going to have a lot of networking? So you need to engage with them. Do you want them to go around the venue and have a lot of fun time exploring the thing on their own? So this becomes a necessity to understand, saying what is the audience experience and what are they going to take back with them when they're going to do this event. So type of seating becomes an essential learning, which I'm sure you will learn when you do production of events. safety and security and comfort. What is the client expectation on the safety and security, and what is your audience expecting when they come to a venue and an event of the stature that you're trying to host, as far as their personal safety is concerned, as far as their personal comfort is concerned. So while you may say, plastic chairs are good, is that what your audience likes? Is that their profile? Is that what they go and experience? So very critical to understand who is your audience. What are the chief dignitaries who are coming in? What is the hospitality requirement? So this again is essential to know. Order of presentation, what is politically correct? Who would come first speak? Who would come and sit in the front? Who would come and be a dignitary? How do I manage protocol so that no one feels offended? Especially in social celebrations, this becomes a very sore point for audiences who come to the event where they feel that they've not been taken care of. So the onus then goes on the agency saying, you didn't, study this or research this well. You didn't do a due diligence. So getting what is politically correct right in the first instance of the meeting becomes an essential of success. And knowing the client. Why is the event being held? What is the purpose of putting this together? What is the purpose of going into the scale? Where do you see it and in the form of an physical education execution? What are its objectives? What are the deliverables? What is the takeout that you want? So what is that one feeling that you want your audience to go back home with? A great show, a great learning, a great understanding, a great experience. Mr. X or brand X is a great brand to be with. I definitely am going to buy this tomorrow because I think I've completely sold into it, and I'm completely convinced that this is what I want to have in my life. What is it one underlying thought that the host wants the audience to take with him? So I want the audience to like me. I want the audience to believe that I am a great musician. I want the audience to say that the song that I performed for them was better on this show than what I heard it on my headphones. And I want to come back to more concerts like this and pay money and listen to it rather than hear it on a application which is free to air. What is the USP of this particular event which is different from my competitor's event or different from the other social events that my audience has seen, heard, and experienced at other forums? So how is my event different from the other fashion shows, the other conferences, the other incentives, the other weddings, the other concerts that I attended? How are they treatment-wise, execution-wise, format-wise, nurturing-wise, experience-wise different? So always make a wish list for your client. List down all means of meeting the client's objectives. Let the client speak his mind out. Probe him. Get into his mind. Ask him questions. Reason out with him. Be patient. Let him talk. Let him express himself. And bring out the expressiveness from him so that you get your answers correctly. Think from a client's perspective. Think how he would visualize this event. Think, understand his malady of budgets, problems, his perception of how the audience needs to see this, his perception of saying, oh, will my audience take it this way? So always try to get into his shoes. How can you contribute this experience to be hassle-free? Take away his worries, take away his problems, take away his stress, because he's coming to you as a professional who will take away his anxiety and enable him to enjoy the experience. So as a musician, I want to focus on my singing. I don't want to worry about the light, the sound, the stage, the video, what my audience is going to do while sitting there. For me, it's my expression of thought. And if you can take the rest of the anxiety away from me, I will give a brilliant performance. So that is what contributes to a success. Always take on your client worries and ensure that he doesn't get into reasoning or trying to foresee a problem and trying to reason out saying, oh, will this work or will this not work? So preempt problems. Think with a foresight. Think in a manner where you will do the crisis management. You will do the forward thinking and enable him to successfully deliver solutions. Go beyond your call. Don't think that I'm only hired to do sound, light, stage, AV, and getting the audience in. Think of how he will appear on stage, because that's a part of the process. Remember, your event is multiple components. The client himself on stage or the performer himself on stage is a component which will make your event a success. What he speaks, what he says, how he appears, what the audience sees him as or his buyers see him as is a part of your event. If that fails, whatever else you do to build that event is also going to fail. If the food or the beverage or the experience that the audience is going to take out, which is not a part of your deliverables, is also going to fail, will make the event uh, diminish its stature. So remember, a wholesome experience is what you're being hired for. Departments that don't fall under your purview, become a professional advice that will make your client believe that you think for him. It will make him believe that you are buying into him, and therefore he will come back to you as a consultant again and again. Even if you make minor glitches, those will be overseen, because in the whole picture you have succeeded to help him deliver a great experience. And that is what a client is looking at you for. That is what a client is coming to you for. So remember, make him realize your worth. Make him understand that every rupee he spends on you is worth his while. Always put up a brave front. Never get intimidated. Remember, it's a people's business. There will be challenges. There will be situations. Learn to handle crisis with your chin up. Lastly, what is TG for your client? Each client has their own interpretation of TG. Understand what he means by a target group and get back to him. Do's and don'ts. Never take a one-line brief from a client. It will take you nowhere. Avoid taking briefs on the phone. Always have a face-to-face interaction. Always have a one-on-one with the client. If it means a video call, get onto it. There's enough technology available. Make a client get into a face-to-face meeting, because then you can see his expressions. You can see how he reacts to stimuli, and that will enable you to read his mind. And remember, it'll also help you to read his excitement when you decipher solutions or you decipher problems, and you'll be able to gauge his fears, his trepidations, his anxiety, and that will enable you to understand and read him better. Don't interrupt a client when he speaks. Write down your queries and then get back to him. Make sure you send a copy of the minutes of the meeting. Take feedback, and that will enable you to better your brief and better your understanding of him and better your solution providing that you will come back to him as a proposal. What works for one doesn't work for the other. Remember, all events are distinct. Keep your eyes open, your wits handy. Remember, well begun is well done. Every client is unique. Every client is distinct. Every client is a human being first, then a product, then a brand, then a company, then a service provider. So remember, his personal emotions, his personal reasoning, his personal cultural values, his personal being will be a far bigger determinant in enabling a decision making, more than what actually will further percolate into brand, into strategy, into other things. So remember, a great beginning is a great brief and a great understanding of who the client is and what he's expecting from you. And that will always lead to a great event. Thank you so much for joining in. I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of this forum. I wish you great education in events. I wish you great learning. And remember, events is a people's business. A client is a person. Reading a person well is reading a great event. I wish you great success. God bless and God speed to you. Thank you so much for joining in.